TI is less than a month away, and Valve have released the 730C patch, which is probably going to be the patch on which TI will be played. So some very important changes here. I'm going to go through the more important changes in particular as they pertain to Zoo and Micro Heroes. So to start with general changes, Dawnbreaker into Captain's mode, and she's not receiving any sort of nerfs, so that's going to be quite interesting. I think Dawnbreaker in her current state is fairly balanced, so it should be fine, but of course I haven't seen her in competitive play at all. So it's very hard to say whether she's going to be strong at TI. Maybe some teams discover sort of new strategies with Dawnbreaker that are very, very strong. I mean, she certainly has the potential to be broken. Any kind of global hero always is sort of dangerous. Next change is the nerf to stacking. So the hero that farms the camp is going to get 15% less for all these stacked creeps, but you still get the same bonus gold if you're the person stacking. So support will still get just as much gold, but carries and other cores to rely on farming stacks will get less. So we're probably still going to see a lot of stacking. Stacking is still very strong, but this just tunes it down a little bit. And then we see a bunch of nerfs to ancient creeps. So the ancient black dragon has the mana cost for fireball doubled. This means that if you take over an ancient black dragon as a Chen or Enchantress, you can cast 2 fireballs, count them, 2. Then you have to wait for 100 seconds to cast a third one, then another 200 seconds to cast a fourth one. That's more than 3 minutes. It's a long, long time. So this means that, for example, the shard on Chen is going to be quite a lot weaker now. It's still probably going to be very strong, but it's definitely going to be weaker. And it means that, for example, on Chen, having something like a mana boost is going to be more valuable than it used to be. But probably primarily this change is to address Helm of the Overlord, but I don't really like that design philosophy. If they want to nerf Helm of the Overlord, just nerf that item directly, which they also did in this patch. But this also affects Chen, it affects Enchantress when she has her talents to take over Ancients, it affects Doom when he takes over Ancients. So, and I don't, in particular, like Enchantress and Doom, I don't think were too strong, so I don't like this change from a design perspective. Now, onto the item changes. Echo Saber, very popular item that basically every melee right-clicker bought this item, so it's been nerfed now, very deserved. MKB gets a bit of a buff, kind of an underbought item, so yeah, seems reasonable. Silver Edge, slight nerf, nothing major. And then very deserved nerf to Sange and Yasha and Kaya and Sange. Data resistance gets nerfed further, very reasonable nerf. Helm of Ironwool gets more expensive, okay, whatever. It was a very efficient item, so yeah, that makes sense. But I think it's primarily a nerf to the Helm of Dominator, which, because of this now, is 25 gold more expensive. Then we've got Sacred Relic going 50 gold down. This also means that Radiance now 50 gold less expensive. And Nullifier is now going to be 25 gold less expensive with these two changes taken together. And we've got Armlet, remains the same cost, has Helm of Ironwool in the as a component here, but the recipe is now cheaper, okay. Crimson Guard, okay, slightly less expensive. Crimson Guard, kind of an underbought item, I feel like, so it makes sense to give it a slight buff there. And then Dominate, as I said, slightly more expensive. And also, of course, the build-up is going to be worse because the Sim of Ironwood will come slightly later. But the big changes here are to Helm of the Overlord. When the recipe cost, so the total cost remains unchanged. So the upgrade from Dominator to Helm of Overlord is slightly cheaper. But yeah, just the whole stats are slightly reduced, and then the bounty from that this creep gives you is now increased to 250. But of course, it's combined with these nerfs here. So Helm of the Overlord is going to be quite a bit less attractive, and I feel like this is an item that we now probably only going to see on Beastmaster and Lycan and other heroes. I mean, there's probably still some heroes that might want to consider Helm of the Overlord, like an Enigma, for example. but probably it's going to go back to being like a Lycan and Beastmaster kind of item. Then neutral item changes, some just slight adjustments. I'm not going to go through those. The hero changes, as I said, I'm not going to go through all the heroes. I'm just going to focus mainly on the zoo heroes and the heroes that sort of get big changes. But what's kind of big about Abaddon is that he doesn't get any changes. He was one of the strongest +5 support. But all that happens here is level 20 talent gets adjusted, which is, you know, whatever. You're not really going to reach that very often on a +5. And also, just kind of a spoiler here, but Omni Knight gets some significant nerfs. And Abaddon as a +5 has a kind of similar role, similar niche that he plays, similar to Omni Knight. So if Omni Knight gets significantly worse, that might mean that we're going to see a lot more Abaddon actually. Some minor buffs to Alk, to Ancient Apparition, Arc Warden, some changes, doesn't really matter too much. Bane was one of the strongest heroes of the previous patch, and it's a hero that just does so much with almost no farm. And these nerfs are basically nothing. It's like 0.1 stat reduction on a +5, who cares? Like some minor talent changes, talent nerfs. Bane is still going to be one of the strongest +5 supports. Batrider, kind of some pretty big changes here. It's like almost like a rework. It's not quite a rework, but it's almost. So it gets an extra 400 day vision, which is very big. But to compensate for that, some of the other spells are going to be nerfed. On the whole, though, I think this is probably a nerf, because like this reduced daytime vision is not actually that big of a deal. Because the thing is that so many things have daytime vision. So most things have full daytime vision, so the fact that you're missing this daytime vision is not as big of a deal. Obviously it makes you worse as an initiator. Like you don't really suffer too much on Lightstock from the fact that you only have 800 day vision. Because like everything else has full day vision. So you get all this vision from other heroes, from your creeps, from towers, and so on. So I think on the whole, Batrider is going to be weaker with this. But it's always hard to tell with this fundamental change like this. Then we get to the first of our Beastie Boys. Beastmaster gets some nerfs. Obviously this is going to hurt his laning. Primal Roar, a bit of a side grade. Worse at level 1, but better at level 3. And then the talents overall get quite a bit worse. So Beastmaster had huge win rates, so I think he's going to be fine. Of course, also Helm of Overlord has been nerfed, so it's hard to tell how exactly the balance is going to play out now. But my prediction is going to be that he's probably sort of right around balanced. I think we're going to see like a decent amount of Beastmaster at TI, because like, especially vision providing heroes tend to be really good there. And Beastmaster, of course, has lots of vision with his Hawks, especially once he gets the Shard. Alright, just gonna scroll through these. Brewmaster, kind of a micro hero, gets a little bit of a buff, does not really matter very much. Chaos Knight, kind of an interesting case. He's a hero that I've always felt is kind of strong, but never really has a very high win rate. So his win rate is pretty mediocre, but you know, now he gets some nice buffs. This is like 3 buffs that each on its own is like fairly minor, but 3 of them taken together is a pretty big deal. I think Chaos Knight should now be in a pretty good spot. Then we have everyone's favorite Inquisitor, Chen. With some nerfs, Divine Favor loses 1 armor across the board and gains a little bit of extra HP regen, but these 2 taken together are clearly a nerf. So at level 1, you lose 1 armor and you gain 1/4 of a point of HP regen per second. That is a very bad trade, and once you've maxed out, it's going to take a while because you're going to max this out at the 2nd or more likely 3rd. So it's quite late in the game that they actually get to level 4, and at that stage of the game 1 HP regen is really not a very big deal, but 1 armor is always a big deal. So definitely a nerf here. And then level 10 talent, slight buff. I think now you probably want to go for the health over the penitence damage most of the time. Like even previously when it was 175, it was already a very competitive choice. But now I think I would lean towards the health in like, let's say 60% of games. But in the whole, of course, Chen has been nerfed, especially with those changes to the Ancients, which makes his Shard a lot weaker. And that was really the big thing that was kind of bringing him back into the meta. And, you know, even so, Chen was not like a strong meta here or anything. His win rates are fairly average. So, you know, you can see he is actually below 50% in most of the brackets. And his pick rates are very, very low. So, and this also, like in pro games, is not picked a lot. Like in the Dota Pit invitation that was just finished, Chen was not picked at all. I think he was banned twice and never picked. So he's not any sort of meta here. He does not need to be nerfed. So I really don't like those changes, especially those ancient changes. Then we get to Klinks, who gets a whole bunch of nerfs. I think this is really overboard. I don't think Klinks was that strong. So with all these nerfs, I don't really see Klinks being very viable anymore. However, one thing that Klinks still is going for him, which is probably a bug, is that he can use Shadow Blade together with Burning Barrage and get the Shadow Blade bonus damage on every hit. So Burning Barrage normally, a cast like this, does, you know, about 6 damage per hit. But if I start channeling this and then use Shadow Blade, I continue to be in this and I get 100 bonus damage here on every hit, roughly speaking. But yeah, even with this bug staying in the game for now, Klinks probably gonna drop off very heavily in win rate, and I would probably think that he's just not any good after all these nerfs. It's just too much. Right, scrolling until we get to Enchantress, which gets a slight buff. Okay. More scrolling through minor changes, and then we get to Kotl. And this might seem like a minor change, you know, damage slightly reduced, but this basically means you can now no longer one-shot a creep wave by just building something like 2 null talismans. So this, I think, kills the mid Kotl. Support Kotl might still be good, but definitely is going to be quite a bit weaker than now. So I don't think we're going to see too much Kotl at the TI. And we see Lycan. Lycan, of course, here that had really high win rates. You know, just look at this, 55%, 58%. And at least in a higher bracket, also has a very decent pick rate. And, you know, huge ban rate there. So this is a sign of a very overpowered hero. So, of course, it makes sense that he gets a bunch of nerfs. We saw already the Helm of Overlord nerfs, which is a core item on Lycan, pretty much. But then Feral Impulse also gets nerfed. You just get 1 less damage percentage per level here. So at level 4, you're missing 4% damage. And you also lose 1 HP regen across the board, which of course is going to hurt his laning. And then also all the talents basically get nerfed. Moving on to Naga, kind of a macro hero. He gets you know, slight buff, I would say. I mean, this is a nerf, but the level 20 and 25 talents get some nice buffs. And yeah, she's also like a carry hero that doesn't really build any of the items typically that were nerfed. So you probably in Naga Siren, you're probably more likely to build a Manta style over SNY, which SNY of course was nerfed, but Manta style stayed the same. And all the other items that were nerfed, not really Naga items. So Naga probably happy about this patch. Probably slightly stronger. Nature's Prophet gets a pretty meaningless buff, like 0.25 base mana region. Who cares? Hero is still very much in the dumpster. Then we got Omni Knight, who's probably the strongest support in 730B. And he gets a big nerf here. Heavenly Grace can now be dispelled. And you don't even need like a strong dispel, just regular dispel is going to be good enough. So this now makes Omni Knight a lot more situational. So if there's no hero in the enemy team that can just naturally dispel, no like Enchantress or Oracle or anything like that, then you can probably still do quite a bit. But if you don't have any more of those heroes, it might be a bit of a problem. Because there are not actually that many items that can dispel. It's only really Yules and Nullifier. So potentially Omni Knight might be a strong situational hero. But of course in pubs usually you want to pick your +5 in the starting phase. You can't really counter pick, so it's kind of a gamble. and you can still be counterpicked later on. Legion Aura gets slight buff, but who really cares? And Guardian Angel slightly more expensive. Of course, going to hurt Omni Knight because his mana pools get limited. So yeah, I think we're going to see quite a bit less of this hero. But the hero was insanely broken. Like 55% win rate. With this kind of pick rate, that's insane. And like the higher up you go, basically, the more this hero gets picked and the higher his win rate is. And yeah, this hero was just way too strong, and it was all because of Heavenly Grace. So it seems like a very reasonable nerf to me. Then Pango was a very flexible hero in the previous patch, was even played as pos 5 quite a bit. And now he gets some nerfs here. You know, the shield crash, slow gets reduced, mana cost gets increased, and Rolling Thunder now has a bit more cooldown. So on the whole, just tuning down Pango a bit, especially shield crash, seems reasonable. BL, minor nerf, I don't really know why, but okay. Rolling down further, we find Shadow Fiend, who had this new shard introduced in 730, and now it gets further buff. The shard does is it gives you 2 souls per kill instead of just 1, and also gives you an active ability that allows you to do a crit while consuming 1 soul, but because you get souls so quickly, it's really not a big cost. So I think the shard might be quite strong now. The problem is that it's really more of like a physical sort of Fiend build, which probably is not as strong as the more magical build, but maybe it might help it make a comeback. Then we have Shadow Shaman, who's already, I think, quite strong. I don't really know why he's getting buffed, but he now gets pretty decent buff here. 0.75 HP region from the start, and also slight buffs to his talents. So I think this hero is very, very strong. He's a strong laner already, and lots of disable, lots of pushing potential. I think this is like one of the really very strong support heroes in the current patch. Can be played as both 4 and 5, so definitely a hero to watch out for. And then we have Silence that gets a very minor nerf. I don't really get this. Silence was really strong. Like, look at this 54% win rate at almost 20% pick. Like, this hero is insane. He's very strong as a support. He's so strong he can even be played as a core quite well. Like, he has like 55% win rate or like all the brackets. So I just don't get it. Why does this hero not get a proper nerf? Like, this is nothing. It's not going to do anything. And especially it's not going to do anything to support Silencer. So I'm just really baffled by this. Then we have Sven, one of like the meta heroes of 730, quite possibly the strongest carry, but now he gets some big nerfs. We've already seen that a bunch of his items were nerfed. We see Echo Saber being nerfed, we see Ancient Yasha being nerfed, and we also see stacking getting nerfed. Of course, Sven is one of the biggest stack farming heroes in the game. And now, on top of all that, we see Omni Knight, also a very strong partner for Sven, especially with Heavenly Grace, now getting nerfed. And Sven is already kind of vulnerable to Dispel, because you can already dispel the Warcry. So the Sven Omni combination is now going to be much weaker. And even just on his own, Sven, his base attack time is increased yet again. It's 1.9 now. It's like a Doom, so it's going to attack very slowly. And Stormhammer gets a nerf to his damage. It's like a very minor change. It's only going to make the laning stage a little bit worse, but you know, it's still a nerf. But this is a much more bigger deal. God Strength, -5-second duration. And you know, each of these changes individually is not neck-breaking, but take all it together, all the item nerfs and the nerfs to Omni and so on, the nerfs to stacking, Sven, I think, is just not a good hero anymore. Sven is one of those weird heroes that just keeps like bouncing from overpowered to basically unpickable back and forth again. and I think he's now again in the unpickable category. But you know, I might be wrong. Maybe Sven is strong enough that despite all these nerfs, he's still going to be decent. But somehow I doubt it. Terrorblade gets a little bit of a buff, not really gonna be too big of a deal. And yeah, then there's a whole bunch of other changes here, but nothing that really affects our zoo heroes or will probably be a very big deal. It's all sort of changes here, a bit of a switcheroo here. That's actually kind of important. Witch Doctor, the shard gets much stronger now. But the thing is, Witch Doctor is already a very underwhelming hero, so this is probably not going to make him too strong, but it probably means that now you probably want to go for his shard almost every time, because it's so much cheaper now. But yeah, as far as the two heroes are concerned, Beastmaster and Lycan, we have to see whether they're still strong. Always hard to tell, just on paper. Chen, I think, you know, with the nerfs, it's gonna be like slightly below average maybe now, but still definitely very much playable. Visage was not touched at all. He's just as strong as he used to be. And then Lone Druid, very underpicked, or not underpicked, but the hero that's picked very rarely. And win rate, kind of like okayish, but you know, mostly specialists playing this hero. But you know, this patch is actually kind of good for Lone Druid because it was mostly a nerf patch. Lone Druid hasn't been nerfed, he hasn't been charged at all. And a lot of the items that other right-click cores would buy have been nerfed, things like Echo Saber, Silver Edge, Ancient Yasha. But Lone Druid's items have been untouched, or in the case of Monkey King Bar, even slightly buffed. So by default, Lone Druid becomes a little bit better because most other heroes got worse. So on the whole, a very reasonable patch. They nerfed some of the biggest offenders, heroes like Sven and our Beastie Boys, but I really don't like the changes they made to Chen. And I also really don't like the fact that Bane is hardly touched at all. But this patch is definitely an improvement on 730B, and I'm very much looking forward to TI, which will, as I said, probably be played on this patch. So that is all for today. See you all tomorrow for the Sunday stream, where I'll be playing some mid lane, Visage, and Lone Druids, and analyzing some of your replays. And Obelisk filling, I'll see you there.